Happy Tuesday from Washington. And here I thought that the Bob McDonnell news was going to be the big political scandal news of the day. Thanks a lot, Anthony Weiner. Love Bob McDonnell. P.S. Please save the next pictures of your genitals publication date for the day I resign from office. Yours truly, Governor Bob. Wow, really? All in the same afternoon? Okay. For the record, today is the day that Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell finally admitted taking over $140,000 in cash for himself and his family from a Virginia business owner who's now under federal investigation. A company that received in return what Virginia newspapers are calling special handling from the governor's office. After setting up a legal defense fund at the end of last week, after hiring a phalanx of high-powered lawyers, after hiring even a high-level crisis PR guy, the embattled governor of Virginia today, for the first time, apologized for making the state a laughingstock, said he's paying back some of the cash which he says were loans. That said, the catering bill at his daughter's wedding, the other $10,000 for the other daughter's wedding, the $6,500 Rolex watch for the governor, the $10,000 suede jacket for the governor's wife, the Bergdorf Goodman New York shopping trip and all the rest for the wife. Yeah, he's keeping all that. But some of the cash he says he has now paid back. And also, for the first time, he has said he is sorry. And so far, at least, he says he is not resigning. Now, if Governor McDonnell performed official actions like, say, setting up meetings for this company with state officials in exchange for all the cash and loot that he took from that company, then today's apology is not going to stop a federal grand jury from indicting Governor Bob McDonnell, and it will not stop him from going to federal prison if the charges are proven in court. But still, while everyone is waiting to hear, I resign, I am stepping down, it is sometimes nice to hear I'm sorry along the way. As I mentioned, though, Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell sort of got lucky today in the political scandal sweepstakes. Bob McDonnell had the good fortune of dispensing with his "I'm sorry, I'm paying back some of the money, but I'm not resigning" statement on the same day, the same afternoon that this happened.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Weiner, Democratic candidate for mayor of the city of New York. I have said that other texts and photos were likely to come out, and today they have. As I've said in the past, these things that I did were wrong and hurtful to my wife and caused us to go through many challenges in our marriage that extended past my resignation from Congress. While some of the things that have been posted today are true and some are not, there is no question that what I did was wrong.
That, of course, is former Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner of New York during a hastily called press conference just a few hours ago. Former congressman responding to a new round of sexually explicit messages and photos that were published online today by a website called, drumroll please, The Dirty. The website is called The Dirty. Seems like kind of the only appropriate thing going on in this story. Anthony Weiner is now running to become the next mayor of New York City. He's on the ballot in the Democratic mayoral primary that'll take place in September. But, of course, his candidacy has largely been overshadowed up to this point by the online sexting scandal that very famously and fairly recently ended his high-profile career in Congress. He resigned from Congress in 2011. When Anthony Weiner decided to jump into this mayoral race, he indicated that more messages and more naked pictures, like the ones we had seen before, more of those pictures and messages existed online. He warned that those messages and pictures would likely come out during the course of this race. What he did not mention, though, was that those messages and those naked pictures would come from online no-pants exchanges that he was still having after he supposedly came clean and apologized and resigned from Congress. Anthony Weiner's apology tonight was specifically in relation to inappropriate online conversations that he had within the past year, which is a problem for him to the extent that his whole redemption tour in the press and his decision to run for office again were pretty explicitly premised on the idea that, yeah, he had done wrong, but he learned his lesson. He was a new man. He had ended that sort of activity upon resigning from Congress. Mr. Weiner resigned from Congress in June 2011. At that point, he largely disappeared from public view. But in the rare moments when he decided to reappear, he did so essentially to assure people that all his problems were behind him. Right? His first big public reappearance came in People magazine in July 2012. It was heartwarming. This big, sweet spread with his wife and his newborn son. Family man. He's remade in the public image, right? In that interview, Anthony Weiner told the world, quote, "I really do feel like a very different person. I have enormous regrets about what I put Huma through, how I let my constituents down, but it's not like I sit all day replaying it in my mind. With a baby, it's pretty easy to put things into perspective." Again, that interview was published July 2012. We learned today that the reason he didn't have to replay it in his mind is that he was still doing it. That was the same month that he was engaging in this latest online exploit. He was telling the public, "I really do feel like a very, very different person," while in private he was continuing with the same activity that caused him to resign from Congress. Since Anthony Weiner has reemerged on the political scene, he seems to have made a concerted effort to at least give the appearance that this sort of activity ended when he left Congress. This was an interview that he gave to the local NBC affiliate in New York City this past April. Watch.
A lot of New Yorkers who are used to seeing you all over the place on TV every day when you're a congressman, wondering, really first and foremost, where have you been?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I haven't been in Congress. Been spending a lot of time on two big jobs. One is making it up to my wife, and, you know, I've got a lot of apologizing to do there. And she's been forgiving, but it hasn't been easy. And the other primary thing, in addition to trying to be a better husband, is being as good a father as I can be. Is I got a 15-month at home, which is a handful.
You sure those are your two big jobs right now? You sure that's what you're doing? Anthony Weiner conveniently leaving out the other big thing he was up to in that same time period. The other thing he was forced to confront with his wife by his side earlier tonight.
When was the last explicit text?
I can't say exactly. Sometime last summer, I think.
Was it after you told People magazine, quote, or your wife told People magazine, it was a lot of work to get where we are today, and you're trying to do the best you can do?
Yes.
Yes. It was after all that. After the redemption narrative said this was all over and I should be given a second chance, I was still doing it for a long time. That right there is the thing that could be the big problem for Anthony Weiner going forward. His acknowledgement tonight that what he was saying publicly about his behavior, even after his supposed fall from grace, was still yet more lying. His public statements still did not match what we know he was doing in private. Why would anybody ever believe him ever again? Joining us now is Melissa Russo, political reporter for NBC's New York station WNBC, who was at today's press conference. Ms. Russo, thank you very much for being with us tonight. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
So by your record of things, how do Congressman Weiner's public statements about his misbehavior and the record of his misbehavior jibe? Was he dishonest since his initial denials that the original scandal was not of his making?
Well, the original scandal, of course, if you remember, he lied about it, which is a little bit different. He was asked today if he's going to drop out, and that's one of the major differences, is that today he's trying to say, oh, I'm being completely forthcoming. The question is, has he changed? He's saying he has changed, but apparently he didn't change until much later than we thought he had changed. One of the most stunning moments in that news conference today, I thought, Rachel, was when Anthony Weiner sort of corrected the media's misperception of the resignation from Congress as having been the important moment in the public discussion. It was sort of a news flash. Apparently, it was not an important enough moment for him to stop that X-rated texting behavior. And so in answer to your question, I don't know, it'll be important to voters? Perhaps. There are a lot of voters in New York City who simply do not care. 2 out of 3 of the most recent public opinion polls have put Anthony Weiner in first place, the front runner. Now, granted, it's a very crowded field. He's only getting about 25% of the vote, but that's enough to get into a runoff. And at this point, in terms of whether or not he's planning to drop out of the race, if those people didn't care before about his behavior, and a lot of people have told pollsters they don't care about Anthony Weiner's behavior, they thought he was decent congressman, might be a good fighter for New York City. The question is, will they care whether he stopped in 2011 or in 2012? I don't know.
And, I got to say that in terms of my personal opinion about this, I don't see Anthony Weiner as a sexual morality hypocrite. And so, therefore, I consider his private behavior to be his private behavior. The thing that I always felt like justified him resigning from Congress was that he lied about it over and over and over again, looking people right in the eye, including me personally, looking me right in the eye.
Do you remember when he called reporters names when they were questioning him?
Yeah, he gets up at the news conference and calls a reporter a jackass for questioning him. And it turns out he lied over and over and over again. Very explicit, like very direct lies. And he was very comfortable with that. That seemed to me like the problem. Now, the question is whether or not, in your view, this changes the perception, not about whether or not his online sexual behavior is of a different magnitude than we thought it was, but whether he is even more of a liar than he seemed like before, whether he's put his lying days behind him or whether he still does.
I think what he's trying to create the impression of, whether or not it's true, is that this whole period of texting is a reflection of a longer troubled period in his marriage that didn't exactly end on a particular day and did not coincide with the day in which he resigned from Congress, obviously. He basically is saying there was a longer, more drawn-out period of time during which they went through some extensive therapy. And I think what he's trying to do at this point, at least at the news conference today, it seemed like he was trying to create the perception that this is an old story. I've been saying for a long time that there were other texts. He was sort of intentionally vague about it in the past. Oh, could there be more texts? Absolutely. Could more things come out? Sure. He's been lowering expectations. So I think what he was trying to say today is that it was not a surprise that these messages surfaced. It was certainly not a surprise to his wife. And I think that's going to be the key thing here was Huma Abedin's appearance at that news conference. She's known for being a very private person, but the reason to have her there today was for the public to see that this was not news to her. This was something that they had already discussed before the decision for him to run for mayor.
Melissa, one last quick question on this, and this could be important, maybe more in terms of his national profile than his run specifically in New York City. But does this, in a way, pose a risk of turning the press against him? I mean, part of the way he lied this second round of times is that he's doing this sort of redemption tour in the press where he's talking about what a changed man he is. And I was totally focused on his family and he's all about making apologies while he's still continuing that behavior. So the press was really used by Anthony Weiner in order to convey the second round of lying. In terms of the vibe in the press conference today, does this latest wrinkle, I guess, does this run the risk of turning the press against him, even in a way that maybe generally constituents wouldn't?
It's possible, but I think that there was a certain amount of credence given to the fact that his wife stood with him and said, look, I already knew about this. I knew at the time, and we had been discussing this essentially for months before we decided that Anthony was going to run for mayor. So will people focus on the fact that, he gave an article a year ago in which he said that he felt like a different person, and in fact he was still sending X-rated texts a month later? Yeah, that'll definitely hurt his credibility, but I'm not sure in terms of voters. They may feel that they don't care about his indiscretions. You have to remember also for Anthony Weiner, this was never a slam dunk. He's the front runner. Perhaps what his goal was all along was if I can't win, maybe I can at least rehabilitate my image. And maybe the last thing that people remember about me won't be that I resigned from Congress. Perhaps I can come across as a credible candidate that's fighting for the middle class in New York. And I think that's what he's trying to achieve, whether or not he wins this race.
Melissa Russo, political reporter for NBC's New York station, WNBC. Melissa, thanks very much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Rachel. We have to do a correction later on in the show tonight, but I feel like I have to apologize right now because I will never, ever forget having used the word wrinkle in a metaphor while discussing this story. And for that, I am deeply sorry. We'll be right back.